Have you ever given everything for something, only to have it ripped away in a single moment? Imagine building an empire, a legacy that you've sacrificed years of your life for, only to watch it crumble, at the hands of the very people you trusted most. This is the story of Jessica, a woman who thought her place was secure, her future laid out, and the company she helped build, hers to lead. But one fateful call shattered that illusion. In an instant, her father, the man she worked alongside for over a decade, told her she was out. Everything, the company, the dreams, the years of dedication, was now handed to her brother Liam. The golden child, the one who had never cared about the business, but always seemed to get exactly what he wanted. How would you react if your entire world, your identity, was taken away with one simple sentence? Jessica didn't scream. She didn't beg. Instead, she walked away quietly, her heart heavy with betrayal, but a spark was ignited in her, a fire that would change everything. This isn't just a story about a woman scorned. This is the story of how Jessica rose from the ashes of her father's betrayal, how she built something even bigger, better, and far more meaningful than the empire she had once believed was hers by right. In the next 30 minutes, we'll walk with Jessica through the deepest of betrayals, the darkest of struggles, and the eventual victory that not only brought her success but peace. This is a story about family, power, revenge, and the strength it takes to rebuild when everything seems lost. At 30, Jessica had built everything she had ever wanted. Years of hard work, sleepless nights, and countless sacrifices had gone into building Mitchell Enterprises alongside her father. What started as a dream was now an empire, one she had poured her heart and soul into, believing it would be her legacy. She was convinced that her place at the top was secured. After all, who else could carry the torch except for the one who had built it from the ground up? But one phone call changed everything. It came on an ordinary day. Jessica was in her office, deep in thought, preparing for an upcoming meeting. The phone rang, and on the other end, her father's voice was calm. "Come." In the same steady tone, he informed her that she was out. Mitchell Enterprises, the company she had sacrificed so much for, was no longer hers. It was being handed over to her brother Liam. Liam, the one who had always been disinterested in the business, the one who spent his time enjoying luxury resorts while Jessica worked 16-hour days. He was the one who would now take her place. The golden child. The one who had never had to prove himself. The one who was, in Jessica's eyes, entirely undeserving. The news hit like a wave of cold water. She felt a lump in her throat, a tightness in her chest, as the full weight of the betrayal sank in. It wasn't just the loss of a company. It was the feeling of being cast aside, disregarded by the very people she had trusted most. It's hard to imagine what it feels like to be betrayed by the people you love most, but many of us have experienced something similar, whether in a family, a friendship, or even at work. Have you ever been passed over for a promotion you worked hard for? Or maybe a family member who never saw the effort you put in, and instead, someone else was given what you had earned. It's a painful, heart-wrenching experience that cuts deeper than any other. In family businesses, this kind of betrayal is unfortunately not uncommon. It's easy to assume that blood ties will guarantee your place, but the reality is that power dynamics, favoritism, and shifting allegiances can tear families apart. Jessica's experience is a reminder of how quickly things can change, no matter how much effort we put into something. Sometimes we face betrayal from those closest to us. It's a painful truth, but it's one that we all must prepare ourselves for. Whether it's from family, friends, or colleagues, people will sometimes disappoint us. And while the pain of betrayal can feel overwhelming, it's important to remember that it doesn't define us. How we respond to that pain, how we choose to rise after being knocked down, is what shapes our future. As the days passed after that fateful phone call, Jessica's mind raced. At first, she felt numb, almost like the news hadn't fully sunk in. But soon, reality set in, and the true weight of the situation began to dawn on her. Her father's betrayal wasn't just a sudden decision. It had been a long time coming. The truth started to unravel slowly. She had been excluded from every important decision over the past year. The financial reports stopped showing up on her desk. Key meetings, once shared between her and her father, were now held behind closed doors with her brother Liam. He, who had shown no real interest in the company until now, was suddenly stepping into the spotlight. Jessica had always been the one keeping things running, pulling them back from the brink of financial collapse time and time again. Yet, in the past year, things had changed. She couldn't ignore the growing sense that her father had been slowly grooming Liam to take over, despite Liam's complete lack of involvement in the business. Why would her father, the man who built Mitchell Enterprises with her, push her aside for someone who had never cared about it? Was this favoritism? Or something deeper? When we look at family-run businesses, this kind of thing happens more often than we might think. The dynamics of family, with all its personal connections and history, can often cloud judgment and influence decisions. A business that was once founded on hard work and shared goals can quickly become a place of favoritism and imbalance. And that imbalance can destroy not just the company but the very relationships that once supported it. Take, for example, the famous family businesses like Ford or Walmart, where generational divides and shifting family dynamics have led to challenges in leadership. Often, it's the younger generation that feels entitled to step into roles, while the older generation continues to hold on to the reins. And while this can sometimes work, more often than not, the lack of transparency and fairness leads to tension, conflict, and a breakdown of trust. For Jessica, the signs were all there. Her father had always preached the importance of loyalty and hard work, but when it came to passing the torch, he handed it to Liam, the golden child, without any clear reason. This wasn't just about business. It was about trust, respect, and the painful realization that she wasn't seen as an equal anymore. Lack of transparency and fairness in decision-making can destroy not only a business but also family relationships. When decisions are made behind closed doors, when favoritism creeps in, it undermines trust, and without trust, any relationship, whether personal or professional, begins to crumble. Jessica's story serves as a powerful reminder of how important it is to keep things fair and open, especially in family-run businesses. Jessica had to face the harsh reality. The betrayal wasn't a single event. It was a pattern of decisions that had been building for months. Now, with her back against the wall, she had a choice to make: let it go or fight back. When Jessica's world came crashing down, she didn't crumble. Instead, she made a decision that would reshape her future. Revenge wasn't just about making her father and brother pay for their betrayal. It was about rebuilding herself, finding the power she thought she had lost, and showing the world that she was far stronger than anyone had ever imagined. The first step in Jessica's plan: reaching out to someone she trusted, someone who had always believed in her, even when her father didn't. That someone was Ethan Carter. Ethan wasn't just a business associate. He was a lifelong friend of her father's, someone who had been there from the very beginning of Mitchell Enterprises. He had seen Jessica grow up, witnessed her work ethic, and understood her capabilities better than most. In fact, Ethan had been one of the few people who had always seen her potential, long before anyone else did. But now, her father was blinded by his loyalty to Liam, and Jessica needed someone who could see the truth. Why Ethan, though? Why not just go it alone? Well, here's the thing: building anything, especially after losing so much, requires more than just personal strength. It requires support, guidance, and trust. Without the right people around you, you can't achieve your vision. Think about it. If you were starting something from scratch, who would you turn to for help? Is there someone in your life who's always believed in you, even when others doubted? That's what Jessica did. She turned to a person who knew her value, someone who was already on her side before the betrayal ever took place. Ethan was more than just a mentor. He was a partner in this plan, and she needed him to help her secure the resources, the funding, and the right connections to build her own empire. Ethan had a network, the business savvy, and the experience that Jessica knew she lacked after spending years at Mitchell Enterprises, constantly under the shadow of her father. Building a strong, successful company, especially one designed to challenge her father's empire, wasn't something Jessica could do alone. She needed to surround herself with the right people. And that's where Ethan came in. He was the trusted ally who would stand by her side and help her lay the groundwork for something that would leave Mitchell Enterprises in the dust. Never forget the people who believed in you when no one else did. In times of hardship, it's easy to feel alone or defeated. But remember, there are people in your life who see your potential, even when the world is blind to it. These relationships, whether friends, mentors, or colleagues, are invaluable. Hold on to them, nurture them, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. As Jessica connected with Ethan and laid out her plan, something inside her shifted. This wasn't just about getting back at her father. It was about creating something even bigger, something that would prove her worth and change everything. After the betrayal, Jessica didn't waste time wallowing in defeat. She took that pain, that anger, and transformed it into determination. If her father and brother thought they could take everything from her, they were gravely mistaken. Jessica wasn't going to let Mitchell Enterprises be her legacy. She was going to build her own. And so, Jessica began laying the foundation for something new, a company that would not only rival Mitchell Enterprises but surpass it. She wasn't interested in just creating another business for the sake of competition. She wanted to build a company with integrity, where hard work and talent were the true driving forces, not favoritism or nepotism. Her first step was clear. She needed to focus on the areas where Mitchell Enterprises was weakest. As Jessica had always known, the company had been expanding too quickly into areas it didn't fully understand. New acquisitions, industries that lacked the infrastructure to support them. These were the cracks she had seen growing over the past year. And now, they were her opportunity. But the biggest challenge wasn't the business strategy. It was the people. Jessica knew that a company could have the best ideas, the most innovative plans, but without the right team, it would all fall apart. She had spent years working with the best in the business, people who were just as dedicated as she was. So, she did what few people would do. She started recruiting from Mitchell Enterprises itself. She wasn't looking for employees who simply wanted a paycheck. She sought out the people who had been overlooked, the ones who had worked tirelessly in the shadows but were never recognized. She knew they had the skills, the passion, and the loyalty to help her build something remarkable. And more importantly, she knew that they were just as tired as she was of being underappreciated. This was one of the biggest differences between Jessica and her father. While her father had always been focused on name recognition and legacy, handing the reins to his son simply because of their bloodline, Jessica understood that true success lies in the people you build your empire with, not just the name that comes with it. Think about some of the most successful companies today. Take Google, for example. The company didn't become a tech giant by simply hiring famous names or focusing on legacy. It thrived because it built an environment where the best and brightest could thrive, where innovation was nurtured and talent was recognized. Employees like Sergey Brin and Larry Page didn't rise to the top because of their last names. They rose because they were visionaries, and they surrounded themselves with others who shared that vision. Jessica took this lesson to heart. She didn't need Liam, and she didn't need to carry the weight of a family legacy that wasn't hers to begin with. What she needed were talented people who were willing to build something from the ground up, to fight for something bigger than themselves. Managing people effectively and creating a positive work environment are the key ingredients to a successful business. It's not just about hiring the right people. It's about nurturing talent, fostering loyalty, and creating a culture where everyone feels valued. A business built on these principles is one that stands the test of time. With her team in place and a clear strategy, Jessica was ready to move forward. But she wasn't just building a new company. She was building a new kind of legacy. One that didn't rely on name, wealth, or bloodline, but on hard work, respect, and the strength of the people who truly deserved to be there. Jessica watched from a distance as her father's empire began to unravel, but she didn't feel any satisfaction, only quiet anticipation. The cracks that had started forming in Mitchell Enterprises were now widening. It wasn't long before Liam's lack of experience began to show. The first real sign of trouble came with a major acquisition that Liam had spearheaded. Mitchell Enterprises had been in talks to acquire a mid-sized tech firm, Harlan Tech, a move that could have greatly expanded their supply chain operations. But when Liam took over the final negotiations, everything fell apart. He overpromised, underprepared, and ultimately pushed Harlan Tech into the arms of another competitor, one that Jessica had advised on the acquisition herself. The headlines came quickly. Mitchell Enterprises fumbles key acquisition as CEO's son mismanages deal. The damage was done, and trust with key partners and investors began to erode. The deal, once seen as a great opportunity, now stood as a symbol of mismanagement. Investors, once confident in the company's leadership, began to question everything. Was Liam really the right person to lead the company? Was the future of Mitchell Enterprises in jeopardy? Jessica knew this was just the beginning. Why did this happen? Why did Liam, someone who had never cared about the company, make such a critical mistake? The answer was clear. He lacked preparation and understanding of the complexities of running the business. Liam had never taken the time to learn, to immerse himself in the details, to understand the financials and the operations. He was thrust into a role he didn't earn, and without the right foundation, he made reckless decisions that would have far-reaching consequences. This is the danger of skipping over the important work, the long hours of planning, learning, and understanding that go into making business decisions. When people are promoted based on their last name or personal connections rather than their expertise or experience, the results can be disastrous. A great company can only stay great when its leaders understand the intricacies of what they're running. Without the right skills and preparation, even the most promising business can fall apart. Consider the example of the downfall of companies like Enron or Lehman Brothers. Both were giants in their respective industries, but poor leadership, risky decisions, and a lack of transparency led to their collapse. In both cases, key players had failed to grasp the full scope of the risks they were taking, and their companies paid the ultimate price. In business, ignorance and arrogance can lead to irreparable failure. Making decisions without proper knowledge, preparation, and foresight can destroy not just a business, but careers and reputations. Liam's misstep was not just a blip on the radar. It was the first sign that Mitchell Enterprises, under his leadership, was heading for a fall. Jessica knew that her time was coming, but she also understood that the real strength of her plan lay not just in waiting for the empire to crumble, but in positioning herself and her new firm to take full advantage when that moment arrived. As Jessica watches her father and brother spiral into chaos, she's faced with a choice: walk away or fight back. But this isn't just about business, this is personal. Every failure, every misstep, only fuels her determination to prove that she's more than what they've made her out to be. Now, I want to hear from you. How would you feel if you were in Jessica's shoes? Betrayed by the people you loved and trusted most? Would you be ready to fight back, or would you let it go? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Your perspective might just shed light on what Jessica's going through, and it might inspire someone else going through their own challenges. Let's keep the conversation going. The first cracks in Mitchell Enterprises had been subtle, almost imperceptible at first. But now they were growing wider, threatening to swallow the entire company. Liam's mismanagement of the Harlan Tech acquisition was only the beginning. The real damage began to unfold when the company's reputation took a hit, and with it, the trust of employees, partners, and clients alike. As the news of the failed deal spread, whispers turned into loud murmurs. Employees who had once stood by the company through thick and thin began to question their loyalty. Senior managers who had long been underappreciated saw this as the last straw and started looking for other opportunities. Jessica knew many of them personally, people who had been vital to Mitchell Enterprises' success, and now they were walking away. They had worked hard, but with Liam at the helm, they saw no future. Clients, once confident in the stability of the company, began to hesitate. The contracts that Mitchell Enterprises once had on lock were now up for grabs. Important deals began to slip through their fingers, slipping into the hands of competitors who were hungry for the business. One by one, long-term partnerships began to crumble. The foundation that her father had worked so hard to build was slipping away like sand through their fingers. Jessica had always feared this moment, but now that it was here, it wasn't as satisfying as she had imagined. The collapse of Mitchell Enterprises wasn't a cause for celebration. It was a painful reminder of how fragile success can be, especially when it's built on shaky leadership. This situation mirrored the fate of many companies that failed to adapt to changing times. Think of Blockbuster, a company that dominated the video rental industry for years. Blockbuster had every opportunity to lead in the digital streaming age but failed to recognize the growing trend of on-demand services. Instead of innovating, they clung to their outdated model and watched Netflix rise to take their place. The result? Blockbuster's decline, a symbol of a company that couldn't adapt to new technology and consumer behavior. Similarly, Kodak, once the giant in photography, failed to make the shift to digital photography. Despite being the first to invent the technology, Kodak hesitated, too afraid to move away from their film-based business. As the world changed, Kodak didn't. And just like Blockbuster, it lost everything. Mitchell Enterprises, like these companies, had failed to adapt to the changing landscape. With Liam at the helm, the company didn't just stumble, it began to fall apart. Leadership is critical, especially in times of crisis. A strong leader doesn't just react to problems, they anticipate them, innovate, and adapt. In times of crisis, the ability to think ahead, make tough decisions, and steer the company through turbulence is what separates the successful from the failed. Without that leadership, a business can unravel quickly. Jessica had seen the signs. She knew what was happening. Mitchell Enterprises was collapsing under its own weight, and there was nothing Liam could do to save it. But while Mitchell Enterprises was falling, Jessica was building. And as she watched the empire crumble, she couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of her own rise. It had been weeks since Jessica had heard from her father. The silence was deafening. She had prepared herself for the inevitable, for the moment when he would realize the magnitude of his mistake and come crawling back. But nothing could have prepared her for the call that came one evening, in the middle of a quiet night. The phone rang, and when Jessica picked it up, she heard his voice, her father's voice, cracked with emotion and desperation. "Tessa, we need to talk," he said. His tone unrecognizable from the calm, authoritative voice she had once known so well. He continued, explaining the dire situation at Mitchell Enterprises. Investors were pulling out, clients were leaving, and Liam, though well-meaning, had proven himself to be incapable of leading the company through such a crisis. "I know I've made mistakes," he admitted, his voice low and weary. "But you're the only one who can fix this. Please, I need you." The words hit Jessica harder than she expected. For so long, she had imagined this moment, the moment her father would finally admit that she was the one who had been right all along. But hearing him beg for her help left her feeling cold, distant. This was the man who had pushed her aside, who had chosen Liam over her, who had treated her like a shadow in his own life. And now he needed her. Jessica's heart ached, a mix of anger and sadness flooding her chest. She had been prepared for this moment, prepared to hear him ask for help, but the truth was, she didn't know how she felt about it. Was forgiveness the right answer? Or was this an opportunity for payback? It was a question many of us face in life. When we've been hurt, when someone who betrayed us comes back asking for forgiveness, how do we respond? Do we offer mercy? Or do we hold on to the anger and take the chance to get even? Think of the times when we've been hurt by those closest to us. It could be a partner who broke your trust or a friend who let you down. The pain from betrayal runs deep, and the wounds take time to heal. So when those same people come to you, asking for forgiveness or for help, the decision is never easy. It's not about whether you can forgive, it's about whether forgiveness is the right choice, or if it will just keep you stuck in the same cycle of hurt. Jessica's choice wasn't easy. She had every right to say no, to let her father's empire crumble under the weight of his mistakes. After all, hadn't he abandoned her once before? Shouldn't he pay the price for pushing her aside? But as much as her pride screamed for revenge, Jessica knew deep down that the right decision wasn't as clear-cut as it seemed. Forgiveness is powerful, but sometimes it's not the solution. When someone betrays you repeatedly, it's not always wise to offer forgiveness, especially if it means sacrificing your own well-being or sense of justice. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? Do I need closure, peace, or a chance to move forward? And is helping this person part of my healing, or will it drag me back into the past? Jessica's decision wasn't just about the future of Mitchell Enterprises. It was about her own future. She had been betrayed, and the path forward was no longer about pleasing her father or saving his company. It was about her own power, her own strength, and whether she was willing to give her family another chance. But what would she do? Would she help him, or would she let the past stay in the past? Jessica listened to her father's plea, weighing the years of hurt, the betrayals, and the lies that had led them here. In that moment, something inside her shifted. She wasn't interested in saving Mitchell Enterprises anymore. She didn't need it. The empire they had once built together was crumbling, and Jessica saw that as her opportunity to rise. She had always been the backbone of the business, and now she would build her own empire, one that would eclipse the very foundation her father had created. No longer bound by the constraints of family loyalty or obligations, Jessica could finally build the business she had always envisioned, one that valued skill, talent, and innovation over bloodlines and favors. Instead of agreeing to help her father, Jessica made a bold decision. She would not only create a new company but use the very mistakes her father and brother made to her advantage. She would take the assets of Mitchell Enterprises and build something even greater. With her knowledge of Mitchell Enterprises' weaknesses, its over-leveraged investments, its faulty acquisitions, and its lack of strategic direction, Jessica began to act swiftly. She knew where the cracks were, where the company's vulnerabilities lay. She strategically began acquiring the valuable parts of Mitchell Enterprises that were now up for sale, picking them off one by one. This wasn't just about buying assets. It was about taking control of the key resources that had once belonged to her family's company. Jessica didn't need to rely on anyone else's help to make this happen. She didn't need her father's approval or Liam's misguided ambition. She had her own vision, and she was determined to prove that she could build something far more successful than the empire her father had left behind. Her movements were calculated, precise. She negotiated deals behind closed doors, slowly pulling away the assets that her father had worked so hard to protect. All the while, she kept her focus on the bigger picture. Not just dismantling Mitchell Enterprises, but using its failures to fuel her own success. What Jessica was doing was a masterclass in strategic maneuvering. She was taking everything, every piece of Mitchell Enterprises, without directly attacking it. She was letting it fall apart on its own. She didn't need to force the collapse. She simply allowed it to happen, step by step, using her knowledge of the company's weaknesses and her own growing influence to take what was rightfully hers. Revenge is not just about reclaiming what you've lost. It's about proving your strength and capability. Jessica's actions weren't driven by blind anger or a desire to see her father and brother fail. They were driven by the need to demonstrate that her success wasn't defined by her family or the company they built. It was defined by her vision, her intellect, and her ability to build something stronger from the ground up. By taking everything, Jessica wasn't just reclaiming her place in the business world. She was showing herself and the world that she had always been capable of more. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving that her worth had never been in question. And so, Jessica stood at the pinnacle of her own success, looking down at the crumbling ruins of Mitchell Enterprises. She had taken everything, her father's empire, her brother's inheritance, and turned it into her own. She had shown them all that it was never about the company, never about the name. It was always about the strength within her, the drive to succeed, and the refusal to let anyone define her future. As she gazed out at the skyline of the city she had built her own future in, Jessica knew this was just the beginning. She had proven her strength, and now the world would know her name. It had been weeks since the collapse of Mitchell Enterprises. Jessica had seen the empire her father built crumble, step by painful step. But despite the victory of her new business taking off, there was still one thing that remained unresolved: her father. The man who had once been her mentor, her partner, the man she had trusted more than anyone else, was now an afterthought. He had underestimated her, and now, as his empire lay in ruins, it was time for him to face the consequences. The day came when Jessica received a call from her father. Her real father, Not the businessman, not the cold figure of authority, but the man who had once held her as a child and taught her the ways of the world. "Tessa," he said, his voice soft and heavy with the weight of regret. "We need to talk. Please meet me." It wasn't the first time he had reached out, but this time, Jessica knew it would be different. This wasn't about pleading for help or forgiveness. This time, her father was coming to her to admit something he had never been willing to admit before. His mistake. The mistake of pushing her aside, of choosing Liam over her, of not seeing her for what she truly was. Capable, intelligent, and worthy of leading Mitchell Enterprises. Jessica met him in a small cafe, a place they had visited countless times when she was younger. Her father looked older, more frail. His eyes tired from the weight of failure. As he sat across from her, the usual air of authority was gone. Instead, there was something different in his gaze. Vulnerability, and something Jessica had never seen from him. Defeat. "Tessa," he began, his voice shaking ever so slightly. "I was wrong. I was wrong to push you aside. I was wrong to think that Liam could lead this company. He's not you. And now I see the damage I've done." Jessica listened, her arms folded across her chest, her gaze steady but not filled with the anger she might have expected. She didn't feel a rush of satisfaction, nor did she feel the need to gloat. Instead, she felt an overwhelming sense of distance between them. Her father had always been the center of her world, the man whose approval she craved, whose opinion shaped the way she saw herself. But now, as she listened to his words, Jessica realized something profound. She didn't need his validation anymore. She had built her own empire, had proven her worth in ways she could never have imagined when she was working under his shadow. "You made your choice," Jessica replied, her voice calm, almost detached. "And everything that's happened since was the result of that choice. I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it because I realized I don't need you to succeed. I don't need anyone to define me." Her father's face softened, and for a moment, Jessica saw the man who had raised her, the man she had always loved despite his flaws. "I was trying to protect you, Tessa," he said quietly. "I thought I was doing what was best for the company, for the family." Jessica shook her head slowly, her gaze never leaving his. "No, Dad. You were trying to protect yourself. And in doing that you held me back. You made me think that I needed your approval to succeed. But I never did. I was always enough." The weight of his failure was clear in his eyes now, and Jessica realized that, for him, admitting his mistakes was a bitter pill to swallow. His love for her, his desire to protect her, had ironically become the thing that held her back from becoming the woman she was meant to be. His inability to see her as an equal, as a leader in her own right, had led to this moment. His downfall and her rise. As Jessica sat in her new office, staring out at the skyline of the city she had built her future in, she realized something profound. She didn't need her father's approval. She didn't need the legacy of Mitchell Enterprises or the validation of a family who had never seen her for who she truly was. What she had built, what she had achieved, was entirely her own. Her new company was thriving, and it was no longer just a business. It was a testament to her strength, her resilience, and her ability to overcome the obstacles life had thrown at her. For so long, Jessica had been defined by her connection to her father and the company they had built together. But now she had forged her own path. She was at the helm of her own empire, one built not on legacy or family name, but on her own abilities, decisions, and vision. Jessica's story is one of many in the world of successful entrepreneurs who started with nothing and built something truly remarkable. Think of Oprah Winfrey, who came from a humble background, raised in poverty, yet went on to become one of the most influential women in the world. Oprah didn't rely on family money or connections. She built her empire from the ground up, with sheer determination and a belief in her own voice. Or consider Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. She started with just $5,000 and an idea for a product that would revolutionize the hosiery industry. Sarah didn't have a rich family to support her. She had to figure things out on her own, learning as she went and overcoming countless setbacks along the way. Today, she's a self-made billionaire and a symbol of entrepreneurial success. These women, like Jessica, didn't let their circumstances define them. They didn't rely on family legacies or connections. Instead, they believed in themselves and took bold steps toward creating something entirely their own. They proved that independence and self-belief are the real keys to long-term success. True success comes from within. It's not about the family you were born into or the connections you inherit. It's about your ability to trust yourself, to work hard, and to carve your own path. Independence doesn't just mean financial freedom. It means the freedom to make your own decisions, to trust your instincts, and to build something that reflects who you truly are. Jessica's success was not just about taking back what was hers. It was about standing firm in her own strength, building something that would last, and proving that she didn't need anyone else's approval to succeed. Forgiveness and family reconciliation are never easy, and they often come with deep wounds. Sometimes we have to let go of the past and accept that the people we love have flaws, and that their love, while real, can sometimes be the very thing that holds us back. Jessica had every right to hold on to her anger, to make her father pay for his mistakes. But instead, she chose to stand firm in her own power. She didn't need him to validate her anymore. In life, sometimes the most difficult step is not forgiving others, but forgiving ourselves for believing we were ever less than we are. Jessica had done that. She had built something on her own, something far stronger than the company her father had made. And in that moment, as she faced him, she realized that the greatest victory wasn't in taking back the company, but in finding herself. As Jessica watched her father leave, head bowed in defeat, she knew that she was ready for whatever came next. She had taken back everything she deserved: her respect, her career, and her future. But most of all, she had proven to herself that she had always been capable of standing on her own. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to Jessica's incredible journey. It's a story of betrayal, strength, and redemption. The biggest lesson here is that sometimes when life pushes us to the edge, it's not the end. It's a new beginning. No matter how many times you're knocked down, the power to rise again lies within you. Jessica's story reminds us that we are never truly defeated until we decide to stop fighting. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How did this story resonate with you? What would you have done in Jessica's place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that will motivate and uplift you. Thank you again for being a part of this journey, and we'll see you in the next one.